EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Welcome to the EM Weekly Show. This is your host, Todd DeVoe, with Dan Scott as well.
Morning.
Dan, how you doing today, man?
Doing well. Doing very well. Thank you.
So this week we're going to be discussing COVID, right? Which seems to be like in everybody's mind right now. But this is this twist to it. In California, we're in the perpetual fire season. In the Southeast, we have hurricane season coming. What do we do with evacuations and sheltering with COVID? I think this is something that and also, how do we deal with responders that are coming in, into that area as well? So, Dan, what do you think? How can we handle this unique situation going on?
Well, ultimately, I think we're going to be, just taking we're going to have to do it. So we're going to take what the steps we've been taking anyway through our day-to-day and just implement those in sheltering. But that means is we're going to have the shelters are going to be basically cut in half on the amount of people we can put in them. Also, the ones who work the shelters are going to have to go through even more procedures on not only them keeping themselves safe, but also the people that they're letting in and how they're letting them in, the procedures they're doing, and then how they're spacing them out, setting up the shelters. And the first responders, and as we mentioned, they're going through it already. And then when you added these large response situations, and it could they have to basically increase what they're already doing as far as their isolation and their body substance isolations, their cleaning and hygiene and distancing, and it gets difficult. And they're sharing equipment, and someone comes positive, then they got to disinfect. It just goes on and on and on.
So now we have these two things that are voiced. I was reading the other day that we are looking at having one of the largest hurricane seasons, right? With named storms, at least, that are coming out this year. And also 2020 is on track to be the hottest and driest years on record. And they're looking at, there was absolutely no rain in San Francisco and Sacramento in February. And then we had a super hot spring. We've already had fires, wildland fires in the area. Matter of fact, we had one by my house not too long ago, caused by a transformer blowing up and caused a small vegetation fire by my house. So I mean, these are real deals, right?
Yeah, we've had a few down here in South County, so, and you throw that on top of COVID, and yeah, it becomes even more of a hassle. And 2020 is on track to be a lot of things, but it's not on track to be one of our best years, in our recorded history.
Yeah, it's like the wheel of death is being spun every single time, and where it lands on, it's like a lot
of memes out there. There's a lot of memes out there. What's next? Who's got this for July?
Yeah. How is your disaster bingo card being filled out? I mean, mine's looking pretty. I got a couple. The only thing I need to do on which we might have, because I don't know if you saw the news today, but Iran is having a fire in one of their nuclear power plants.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so nuclear meltdown is one of the things on my bingo card today, and I might be able to yell bingo here if this Iranian nuclear power plant thing gets out of hand.
And we're only 6 months in, so
right.
So yeah, we still got another 6 months of 2020, and who knows what's still to bring. And we know so much is coming. Like you said, we know the hurricanes are coming. We know the fires are going to get worse. We know we could experience drought next. So, in certain places they experience drought constantly. So, what's next? And how do we plan for it? But the hurricanes and the fires and the sheltering it adds one more level to what we have to do to ensure that we're keeping ourselves safe, but the community safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is crazy, and we still have to take a look at the regular response aspects of things, right? I mean, we're not training right now, right? We're not doing emergency management training like we should be doing. We can't, right? We can't bring people in. I saw a picture the other day of one of the meetings that they had with the fire service, regarding the just basically talking about preparing for this now for fire season, and it was in a huge warehouse, and they were so spread apart. They're not sitting next to each other, and that's just the idea here, that we have to do social distancing, we have to wear our mask, we have to do all this other kind of stuff. So we're not having EOC training like we had. Are we going to be prepared for responding to these significant events? Without doing the traditional training that we're doing.
Well, I think that's just it too. Is we need to adapt to the situation, and we are. And what just read an article yesterday that there are increases in budgeting for online education throughout not only the education industry, but throughout the professional and private industry as well, because they know that in order to keep a successful business, they're going to have to apply online technology for their businesses, for their day-to-day responsibilities, and that comes for education itself. There was a story that came out, so they're going to one college in general is going to invest $5 million more in online education this next year. Well, that's that's what we need to be doing. We need to evolve with the situation. We need to adapt to it, and our training is doing the same. We're seeing more webinars. We're seeing more. I was on yesterday. I was on a training session with I was a board of individuals for an hour and a half, based on higher institutions of higher education and the steps they're taking for the reopening, for even increased presence of. Because you got the essential services, right? You got the police academies, you got the EMT academies, you got the nursing schools, and that requires them to be on campus. So how are we going to adapt to that, and how are we going to increase, our productivity as people come back to campus? But also, how does that interfere with your capabilities of like your public safety departments, your police departments on these campuses and in general? Because on the call and on the board I was listening to, it was, if someone gets positive with COVID, they end up having to disinfect the vehicles they use, the equipment they use. They have to trace it, all the people they came in contact, which shifts overlapped. These are all things that we have to now have to worry about. That could shut down a full shift if people have to self quarantine. So what do you do with the people, right? And what happens if that happens in our responses? We're talking about with hurricanes, and we're sheltering, and we have people that test COVID. How do we respond to that? How do we self quarantine? How do we quarantine the individuals that may be positive and seeking shelter? These are all things that we're going to have to adapt to, and it's difficult because it's just as the situation is ever evolving, and just as emergency management in general. And we talk about this being semper gummi, right? Being flexible, being able to adapt. And we're being tested right now on how fast we can adapt to situations.
Absolutely. It's funny because we can't even really do testing, right? When we bring, because it takes a couple days for the test to get back and whatnot. I mean, and the idea of, this is the weird thing about this disease, right? Is that we're doing this whole thing with temperature checks and all this other stuff. And I don't want to call it BS, but you could actually have COVID. You could be shedding and not have a temperature.
Yeah, asymptomatic. That's what they're calling it. You're asymptomatic, and surprisingly enough, on this call yesterday, that's what they said. They said the officer that came in was asymptomatic, didn't have any symptoms, but when he tested positive. And then they had to backtrace. They were doing the temperature checks, they were doing the questionnaires, but he had no symptoms. So that poses a risk as well.
And there's also, I mean, social media is what it is, and paying attention to what's going on there. There are so many people that are out there that are opposed to having trace tracking. They think it's some sort of constitutional infringement on their rights. They're opposed to testing, or they're opposed to not being tested, or it's like all over the place regarding where the populace is. And now you're going to bring them into, say, a shelter and say, okay, we're going to have to test you, we're going to do this, or we're going to track you. Are we going to have compliance with people coming into shelters that do not want to be tested?
Which is just, with situations like that, we find that it's easier to get compliance, because if they don't do it, they don't get shelter. But in general, every day you got someone complaining about something. No one's happy about everything, right? It's against our constitutional. You keep us at home. You're denying us. You're making us wear a mask. You can't make us do that. How can you make us wear a mask when you can't make them pull up their pants? You hear all this different stuff, right? Nobody's happy about everything. That's just the way it is. People are going. They're once we get a vaccine. How many people have we heard say, "Well, once we get a vaccine, I'm not going to take a vaccine." So they say, well, it's going to be like the flu where you got a 50-50 shot that the vaccine's going to work even if you get it. So no one's ever going to be 100% happy. It's just trying to, like you said, adapt to the situation and do the best we can in the moment. And when those situations arise, we have to work that moment. We also, as emergency managers, we're thinking out. We're thinking we're thinking out for the rest of the year. We're thinking out for the next couple of years. How are we recovering from this? Are these is this? And in our conversation yesterday, you mentioned something. You said the new normal, right? The new normal. Yeah. So then this is the same. That's the same term they used for terrorism after 9/11. We're in the new normal. The anthrax attacks, the Boston Marathon, it's the new normal, right? Well, now we're dealing with COVID. It's the new normal. So it would be surprised what you can get used to when you got to deal with it all the time.
Well, I mean, there's a theory that's out there called the Overton window, right? I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
I'm not actually.
It's the idea is that there's a window that slides, right, and it'll tell you, basically, this is where we are today, all right, and then you slide it over a little bit, and this is where we're going, and incrementalism, and so like the idea would be. And not to get political here, I'm just trying to show you this as an example, is the idea of we'll do 9/11, right? The idea of security at your airports, right? When I was a kid, when we were kids, Daniel, I mean, we could walk right up to the gate, say goodbye to our family members.
Yeah, you can walk your family to the gate and watch the plane back away and leave. Yeah.
I mean, I remember waiting for a friend of mine who I was picking up from the airport, and I was actually sitting in the waiting chairs by the gate waiting for him to get off the plane, right? So, but now if we see people just walking around the airport, it's kind of, or obviously see people, but like security, I suppose, that aren't really part of a plane, you're going, what's going on with that guy? I mean, like I had to bring my son, who was a minor, to the airport, and I had to get a special ticket to go back there so that I could walk him to the gate, so, but no one balks at that anymore, right? It's the new normal, right?
It's the new normal. Yeah.
If we did this when I was, 17, 18 years old, and just the next day we had to do that, everybody would lose their mind, but they all know this is the proper thing to do. So I get that. So we're moving that window, over a little bit so people get used to being tested and wearing masks and stuff. But I mean, it is what it is. And I was having a conversation with somebody regarding people from Asia, right? In Asia, not people living here from Asia, but the fact that like it's a norm for them in Japan, China, so forth, to have a mask on when they get sick, right? And when you walk, if you ever been, I lived in Japan. They really easy that people put masks on when they feel ill, or whatever the situation is, or if they don't want it during cold season. And again, it's normal. No one's like, oh, that guy's wearing a mask. It's weird. And now when you see people walking around without a mask today, you go, oh, that's weird. Why they should have a mask on, so I think our attitudes here in the United States are going to shift to where that does become during the flu season, during cold season, that you wear a mask, either if you are sick or you want to avoid getting sick.
So it's so new. That's the whole thing. Is this at least with COVID? It's new with COVID, but ultimately it should be related to the flu. And it happens every year, right? And everybody gets sick and they pass it along. But ultimately, it's a mindset that we as a people, we have a short-term memory as Americans anyway. Yeah. We have a very short-term memory as a culture, and we look at that and we say, yeah, what is it? Is it good to wear a mask in cold and flu season? Sure, yeah. What's even better is not to go outside when you're sick, not to go to work when you're sick. Well, and we as a culture do that. I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I felt bad, but I knew I needed to get stuff done at work, so I went to work. That's a mindset we do need. And a lot of the things that are changing with sick leave and the COVID and giving them more sick leave, and that's a great thing. I think that's a wonderful thing. And there's a lot of people, and I found this even we're in many different areas, but they only get so many sick days and they're afraid to use them. So because they only got so many. They can't,
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're sick for a week, you use all your sick time, you don't have any more. So these are things that we got to think about too.
Hey, let's go to a quick break right now, and when we come back, I want to discuss this a little bit more about shifting the culture, and especially in emergency management and fire and police, where we tend to be a little bit more knuckleheaded and come to work sick. Hey, I guess we're back.
Did you hear anything?
No, I didn't, but that's okay.
All right. Mine went dead, and I didn't know if I were hearing or not. So
that's all right. We'll figure this out. But hey everybody, thank you for bearing with us. We're changing a little bit of the way we're doing things here. Obviously, we have Daniel here as being a co-host on the show, and so it's all good. And the ad did go out, so that's a good thing. Daniel and I are both learning this whole thing, so it's awesome. So okay, we'll talk about that's a good segue actually. Talk about being knuckleheads, and sometimes you're right. It's been tradition where when you're sick, to show how tough you are, you come to work and you're sniffling, sneezing, and you're dying under your desk, and people
tough it out, right?
People force you to go home, and you're like, you got blood coming out of your eyes and your nose, and you're just like,
I'm fine. I can deal with this, right? We're fine. We're tough, right? Just tough it out. I got it. I'm okay. I'll sleep it off.
Right, and you rub some dirt in it, but that we're doing everybody a disservice with this, right? We're doing ourselves a disservice because we're not healing quicker. We're doing our family a disservice because we're probably getting them sick and exposed, and we're doing our coworkers a disservice because we're getting them exposed, and we're doing the public a disservice because we're not on our A game, right?
I think that's instilled with us too, and some of it is individual. Some of it is like, nah, I'm okay. I'll do. I can deal. But then there's others. It's a mindset depending on where they work. Like, you better not call off sick. If you can get through the day, don't call off sick. So, you get that mentality too. Say, well, if I call off sick, I don't want to get in trouble. If I call off sick, what if they think I'm lying?
Yeah,
that kind of, so everybody has a different viewpoint on it, but whether or not you're lying or not, if you don't feel well, don't come to work. Don't put others at risk. It spreads that quickly. If you are going to go out in public, why not wear a mask if you're sick,
right?
Or if you're afraid of getting sick from someone else.
Well, let's talk about a switch in the management of our employees, right? It used to be when you called off sick from your job that you needed to bring in a doctor's note to prove that you're sick, right? It's like, all right, Daniel, you called off sick, you better go to the doctor and get a doctor's note, which forces you to go to the doctors, right, and whatnot. Now I think it's going the other way to where if you call off sick, you almost need to go to the doctor to prove that you're okay to go back to work.
It is too. I mean, they're saying if any reason you feel that you're unsick and you feel sick enough that you need to stay home, well, we want medical clearance to say you can come back to work. And, and even if those have said, oh, I think I might have COVID. Well, now you got to go get tested. And you got to get clearance before you come back to work, because now we have to know.
Right.
So these are things that now we have to, we have to take into account now. It's the new normal.
So let's talk about the new normal here and some of the things that are changing specifically here in emergency management that we've gone through. And I know we talked about it a couple times, or at least alluded to it, where we have gone from the emergency operations center to being an actual physical place where everybody goes. And even though for years we've been moving into the virtual space with different products that are out there, whether it be WebEOC or VOCI or those things where you can actually manage. What's the other one? I don't want to leave anybody out. Buffalo Graphics has a program called DLAN, right? Those programs that are out there that you can do virtual EOCs. And before it was kind of used in a way for EOC to EOC communication, right? In Orange County, California, where I work, you would go in, you log into the WebEOC. That way you can kind of see what everybody else is doing in the county, help share resources and communicate that way. But that being said, during COVID, we've seen emergency operations centers working completely web-based, right? Everybody's working from home. Maybe one or two people are at the command post or whatever. We've seen doctors moving into virtual telemedicine. Kaiser, where I use Kaiser, you can't even get an appointment now, but you can go online and you can get your virtual appointment for different things. Not everything, but for various different elements that you're feeling. So are we going to see a shift, or have we seen a shift? Let me rephrase it. Have we seen a shift to where we're going from traditional going to the EOC to it's okay to be virtual and online? And can we seriously manage an event virtually?
Well, I think it definitely depends on the situation, but I think a lot of things get done in the room. So I don't think you'll ever. I mean, the tool is great, but I don't think you'll ever truly be able to do the work as well unless you're in the same place, the EOC. Working online in a situation where it's not going off and it's not hitting the wall is a little different, like a pandemic versus you got a fire going on, or you got an earthquake that just happened, or you have the hurricanes coming in and you need to be working it actively. I think that changes the scenario. Will more go online? Yes. Can more be done remote? Yes. Can we separate things out? Sure. But the communication aspect of it can fall apart if where everybody's separated. And I think keeping it, so we need to keep that in mind. Is it doable? Sure. All the time? I don't believe so.
And in what situation? Let's keep COVID in mind, right? I understand that if we're disease free, that this is all Mute's point. But in what situation with COVID being in the back of our head, where we'd have today we have a large fire, right? Can we manage the fire from the EOC point, not the ground guys, right? Not the ICP, but the EOC manager portion of it. Could we do that remotely?
That's the thing is being able to turn to the people that to the right and left of you and see what's going on, ask them how things are happening, get those reports. In communications, if they go down remotely, is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be in the same place, knowing what each other's doing, knowing how you can support each other. So yeah, it's capable in situations where it's not, where you don't have an active situation. But yeah, fire going and you need to support that fire. I 100% believe you need to be in an EOC.
So Dan, you and just going to put this back on the decision making hat. You are the emergency manager, right, for your area. All right, yeah, and you have to make the decision to open up that EOC or not. What considerations are you now taking to decide if you're going to activate the EOC to say like a level 1?
Well, it depends on how, where the number one, the incident's taking place. 2 is where the resources are coming from. Am I going to be the one that's supporting those resources? Am I just monitoring the situation? How the levels that we activate? Level 1 could be, and it's different everywhere. I mean, so level 1, but ultimately, what am I going to do to make it so that the people that are coming to the EOC are safe. You're wearing masks, you're doing the temperature checks, and this is happening all over the country. People that are still using their EOCs that are activated to a level 1 or level 3, depending on what scale you use. But when you come in, you're getting a quick questionnaire test. You are wearing a mask when you're inside. Some places are requiring gloves, others are requiring regular sanitation. So it all varies. You want to do, if it was me and I was opening up my EOC, I'm going to do the best I can to protect everybody that's inside that EOC, that's coming to work that EOC, for their personal safety and for mine. So yes.
And so now going back to that, right? Do you do trace tracking completely, right?
Well, it depends on if someone they don't really trace track unless someone's sick and someone comes in contact with sick. And even then, the county the county versus the organization have different ways they do something when they trace track. So in incidents that I heard yesterday on the call was, well, the county said we didn't have to send people home and have them self-quarantine. They said just make them wear a mask since they came in contact with that individual. And the organization said, well, we're going to send them home anyway. So they sent them home, but the county, because they have their guidelines on how they trace it and how if someone was not only symptomatic, but were they contagious with the people they came in contact with. These are all things that they work with when people come in with, when they designate that they've been tested positive. But just because you're activating doesn't mean there's going to be even need for tracing, because did anybody even test positive? I mean, I've been doing this now, and my team that I got 30 officers that I monitor. Nobody in my team's gotten sick because of a lot of that can be with the new policies and procedures we put in place, with making sure that they're washing their hands, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing masks, they're sanitizing, that either they're wiping things down constantly after every shift, before and after their shift. So these are all things you can bring into the mix as far as are we putting it off? Are we keeping it away? If it does happen, how do we trace it? And that's all reliant on your county health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's like one of those things that people have to get used to as well, though. But, wiping down their workspace after they're done or before, I would say both sides, right? You wipe it down after you're done because you're a good person. And then you come in behind Daniel because you're not sure if you did wipe it down or not. And you wipe it down yourself just to kind of make sure that you're done. So if it gets done twice, it's not a bad thing necessarily. What
we do here, and it's you wipe it down when you come in, and they could have watched the person that was coming off a shift wipe it down. They're still required to wipe it down themselves. So you're getting that double layer of disinfection with all the equipment that's being used, vehicles, radios, keys, whatever it may be, computers, phones. This is a mandate.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask one kind of just general question here, and we'll end it up on this one here. And out there to everybody who's listening, I think this is something that we have to consider. What role does emergency management play in keeping the responders up to date and safe on COVID?
I believe 100%. Like our role as an emergency manager is to support and coordinate and keep our responders safe. That's our role. Like, so not only are we trying to keep the community safe, but we got to worry about our responders, because our responders are the ones keeping the community safe. They're the ones out there responding to the situation at hand, and we need to be playing that, keeping them safe, whether it be from a physical hazard or a hazard such as an illness that we are facing right now. And how we do that directly will implicate how they can respond to the community itself. If we have, like I said, if you have somebody go down and then they have to take shifts down, that takes people out of the field that can able to respond to these things, we're not only hurting the responders, we're hurting the community for the lack of responders.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, it's always great talking to you. I really appreciate everything that you do. I hope that you're keeping those responders that work for you safe and sound. And I'll see you guys all next week. And don't forget, right? Please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, wherever else you can find it. And always, sitchradio.com. And we will see you next week.